going gets tough. Now, there's two words that you have to fully understand if you desire to be the leader you were created to be and the leader you're called to be. The first word is foundation. The second word, if you'll look on the next page, about a quarter of a way down the page, the second word that a leader has to understand is future. So write both those words down. We're going to talk about foundation, but I want you to write both those words down. You need to make this part of your vocabulary. You need to use it when you're talking to your friends. You need to use it when you're talking to your parents. You need to use it as you look at what you're doing with your life. You've got to realize that I must have a solid foundation, and I must, as a teenage young man and a teenage young lady, if I want to earn the right to lead others, I must think about the future. Two words that are essential. Now, a leader must first of all prepare himself. And by the way, ladies, a lot of times in the English language, some of these words, like the word mankind or, the word world, there's a lot of terms that are not gender specific. They're kind of broad terms, so I apologize here. It should say a leader must first prepare himself or herself. So that needs to be corrected, and that's bad on us, on me. But young ladies, God needs you, desires for you, longs for you, calls you to be a leader. And by the way, this planet needs you to be a leader. Young men, you're needed. And some of us are AWOL. We're absent without leave. A leader must first prepare himself or herself. Now, the word prepare means three things in the Latin. Number one, it means to be pointed in the right direction. That's what your teachers try to do. That's what some of the counselors try to do. That's what your parents try to do, and they pray for you, and they love you. And sometimes parents don't, and by the way, none of us bat 1,000. I've written about 5 books on parenting. I've written on family. I spend all this time with students. I try real hard to be a great dad. But no parent bats 1,000. And I got news for you, neither will you when you're a parent. But that's what we try to do. We want to point you in the right direction because that's what the word prepare means, to be pointed in the right direction. Now, if I leave here and I'm going to try to make it downtown to watch the ball game, and because it's Martin Luther King Day and the game is scheduled early in the day instead at night, it doesn't matter how good a time I make. It doesn't matter if I avoid a lot of traffic. If I'm going the wrong way, if I get pointed in the wrong way, it doesn't do me any good to make good time. And some of us, by our choices and our attitude, you're headed the wrong way. And a leader must prepare herself. And you must prepare, guys, yourself. Second of all, the word prepare means to be made complete. We must be completed. Now, I don't know what it is. Sometimes there'll be 3 or 4 girls that sit together. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 guys that sit together. And they can't go 1 minute without talking to each other or texting each other or looking on each other's. It's always funny. But yet you'll notice these terms, himself, herself. You see, your friends all sitting there, and by the way, most of them are having a tough enough time trying to get their head together, their act together, their life together. You can't keep waiting on them to somehow help you get your life together and your act together. You have to do this. Himself, herself. It's very personal. And you must be made complete. Please write down this quote. Augustine. You've heard of the town St. Augustine, named after St. Augustine. But Augustine, the great theologian, made this quote, and it's powerful. Our hearts are restless, O God, until we find rest in Thee. Our hearts are restless, O Lord, until we find rest in Thee. And that's why, and I know you've heard it before, and I don't mean to drone on and on about it, but please make sure that you've been made whole. The word salvation is a wonderful word. It means to be it's a synonym for another chance to live. But it's also the word that means to be made whole, to be made complete. Let God fill the emptiness in your life. All right? Now, number 3, you must also be equipped for battle. You must be equipped for battle. Now, my daughter, Christina, if you allow me to use her for an example for a moment, and certainly I'm not saying she's perfect and she didn't make any mistakes, because none of us are, but she's pretty close. But I want you to know, Christina said to me, Dad, you always told me that I was going to have to fight for my faith, that there was a fight, a battle for my faith. But, Dad, when I went to Harvard, it was hand-to-hand combat. You're sitting in a classroom, and it looks like you're the only one that's pro-life. It's like you're like the only one that has a stand about alcohol. It's like you're the only one that really does believe that life comes from God and it's sacred. And then, you know, the professor, you'll quote the Bible, and he sends back that that's not a legitimate reference. Christina wrote him back. You know, he wrote it in paper, big red letters, not a legitimate reference. In this academic environment, she said, I suggest you go and look at the corner of this building and look at the foundational stone and what it's inscribed on that stone. And it says, we are here to honor Jesus Christ and to train young men and women in the Scriptures. He wrote back and said, I told you, don't quote the Bible again. She wrote back and said, let me lovingly suggest, here's an 800 number of a drug and alcohol hotline. Evidently, you're battling some issues in your life. I mean, I was proud of her. She didn't blink. She didn't back down. She made an A in that class. She had several private sessions with the teacher. At the end, he said, I just wanted to see what you were made of. Now, there are going to be folks that are going to be antagonistic. Now, you have to make sure you're a great student, and you have to make sure that you're respectful, and you have to make sure that you're full of truth and grace. But I want to tell you something, young people. You better realize, and I'm not just talking about, you know how us preachers are. I'm telling you the devil's not. You know how we get, you know. But you know what? It's true. But you know what I got to tell you? Life is going to be a battle. Man, you check into a hotel room, you can watch anything imaginable. I fly so much, everybody's little elite club. I got miles coming out my ears, and so you get upgraded, and man, they bring by all the little bottles of liquor, and what do you want to drink? What do you want to do? I go a lot of places the other side of the world. I can do anything, go anywhere. I just want you to understand something, young people. This isn't a game. And you must be equipped for battle. And sometimes it'll be hand-to-hand combat. Now, it's worth it. I'm telling you, man, I lived for the devil. I was 17 till I even gave my life to Christ. But I want to tell you this, man. I am excited. I'm ready for the battle. And by the grace of God, I want to make sure that I am armed and equipped, that I've studied to show myself approved. Jesus himself stated, we must do first things first. We must do first things first, and we must count the cost. I think I said that backwards to you there. Didn't mean to mess you up. Jesus himself said, we must count the cost, and we must do first things first. Jesus, when he gave the example of building a tower, it says, make sure that you count the cost so that you can finish what you start. In other words, don't go halfway up the hill and quit. Now, if you'll look on the very next page, one of the things I want you to understand is that page 5, and you'll notice what I have in the corner up there, so circle that. Eagles never settle, they soar. Don't settle for the easy way. Don't settle. Oh, I might as well like that guy. I might as well, I know I could never get into that school, so I might as well just settle for this. Oh, I know that I could never get that, so I might as well. Don't settle. Eagles don't settle, they soar. Here are the verses that we build SLU on. I must follow him closely today. Now, this was Joshua about to lead the children of Israel into the promised land. The Jordan River was overflowing. There's no way to get across the river. And he said, I must follow him closely today so that I may know the way. Why? Write it down. Because I've never passed this way before. I've never been here before. Pretty young ladies, some of you that are juniors, you've never been a senior. And some of you seniors, you've never been off at college. You've never been away from home. You've never been away from some of your friends. You've never been away from the youth group. Some of you have a great relationship to your parents, and I pray it's always that way. But when it's time to leave and you go off, in other words, what you need to understand is this isn't a game. I want to be close to the Lord. Listen, I've never been a granddad. Listen, I had never been, like I told you, I'd never seen how a father was to be. I didn't ever have an example of a father. I didn't know how to be a good husband. Now, it paid off. I'm perfect, but I want you to know I've had to work hard at that. It's important to me. So I will follow the Lord closely today. Now I'm a grandfather. Now I go through some things in my life and my body and my health I've never had to think about or fool with before. I'm dealing with issues. I'm working on projects now that's so far beyond my pay grade, above my pay grade, it's scary. I get invited to go speak places that, frankly, I'm just going, man, what am I doing here? So this is going to be a verse I pray for the rest of your life. So do you understand, guys? It's not just preacher talk. It's not just fill out the blanks. It's not just, did you have your quiet? This isn't some kind of rules and regulations. This is a life. I have the privilege of being close to him today. Why is that important? Because where you're going, you've never been. You've never been there. You don't know what it's like. Some of you outstanding athletes in this room, you've worked hard. God's given you some amazing gifts. And a lot of people are invested in you and believing in you and counting on you. I'm in these locker rooms all the time. You can't even imagine some of the stuff young men have to go through, even in some of the most successful programs in the country. The challenges, the pressures, the temptation. If you'll take it from an old guy, but an incredibly cool guy. Now, please, the therapist gave me permission to say that. But I just want you to know, follow him closely today because you've never been here before. Number 2, the very next verse, I love this. Sanctify yourself today. What's the word sanctified mean? Do you know? What's a shorthand word? What does that mean? Set yourself apart. Very good. Sanctify yourself today. Pretty young lady, set yourself apart today. There's some things I won't do. There's some things that I'm going to start doing because I know that'll strengthen me. Guys, set yourself apart today. You want to be that athlete? There's going to be some things that you're going to have to be willing to do. Hard things. Sometimes all by yourself. Evander Holyfield, the world champion boxer, he was asked why he did so much running at 4 and 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning. He said, it's real simple. If I want to look good in the middle of the ring with the spotlight on me and millions watching at home or by satellite or pay-per-view, if I want to look good in the spotlight, I got to be willing to do some things when no one is looking. And that was the training. So set yourself apart today for tomorrow. Teenagers, this is God's promise to you. Now, you don't like it if somebody calls you a liar. If I were to say, listen, man, you're a liar. I mean, what a harsh thing to say to somebody, isn't it? You're a liar. I don't believe it. But you know what? We don't say that to the Lord, but we must give him that feeling, because when you get a promise like this, I would circle that promise. I would put stars by that promise. I'd write a note, Jay, don't miss this. Take God at his word. Claim this, that if I set myself apart today, tomorrow the Lord will do wonders amongst you. Now, the second word that you've got to fully understand is the word future. Future. William Shakespeare said, the future, put that in quotes if you would, the future is an undiscovered country. I love that. The future is an undiscovered country. What do you think that means? Anybody know? Just raise your hand. It's hard to see with the TV lights. Anybody? Anybody over here? What's that mean, the future's an undiscovered country? Anybody? Squeeze me? Baking powder? Yes. You got to go chase it yourself, find it yourself. Very good. Anybody else? What's that mean, the future's an undiscovered country? No one's been there yet. Exactly. What were you going to say? Is that what you were going to say? You don't know what you're going to find. Very good. Is that right? Did I hear you right? You don't know what you're going to find. The future is an undiscovered country. Think about that. When you're about to go somewhere for the very first time, you want to learn everything you can about it. Part of what we're about to talk about is what you've got to do to prepare yourself for the future. And I'm telling you now, as a teenager, you may be a ninth grader, and it's like John Cena standing in front of you. You can't see me. Guess what? That's what the future's saying to some of you. I mean, we think about the weekend. We don't think about, if you're in the 9th and 10th grade, 99% of us have never thought about, what do you want said about you when you walk across that stage and get your diploma? In fact, let me just let you in on a little story, all right? I spoke at the Air Force Academy, and I saw some of the best and brightest in the world, all right, at the Air Force Academy. And then I got back home, and I saw all the things they were struggling with, a lot of stuff. And then I got back home, and a young man that I liked asked me to mentor him. But he waited late into his senior year. And he invited me, after we'd been kind of going through this time for a couple months, to go with him to the sports award banquet, and not just sports award, but the honor banquet where they gave out scholarships and awards voted on by classmates and teachers, and they gave away certain recognitions, etc. Anyway, we went for 2.5 hours. Nobody mentioned his name. He didn't get a thing. He sneezed. Nobody said, God bless you. It was the longest night of my life. I sat there 2 hours plus, and he just had his head hung the whole night. Now, I was proud of him, because when we were through, he said, you know, Dr. J, this is one of the worst nights of my life. I'm going, yeah, I can feel you, brother. No, but anyway, he said, I thought he was going to put down people. You know how we do sometimes? You know, I can't believe they gave that to that girl. They don't know really what she's like. I know her. You know how we get? Look at me. You know what? Shake your head. I want to hear the rattle. Oh, they gave him the Daniel Award or the David Award. Yeah. Man, I've seen him sometimes. You ought to, yeah. I mean, a lot of times we resent when other people have something good or some recognition come. I never will forget a couple guys saying in Jacksonville, when everybody was making a big deal about a young guy named Tim Tebow, they said, oh, he's not that strong a Christian. Well, I think 4 years later, I think he kind of answered that question, didn't he? So we can get so petty sometimes. But anyway, I was proud of this young man. He said, you know, Dr. J, he said, I know those girls and I know those guys. Guess what? They deserved it. That guy, that girl, and he named the award, they deserve it. Man, they've lived it. They paid the price. He said, you know what made it such a horrible night? It's not that they won, but he said, I'm telling you, in my heart, I know I could have gotten some of those awards. I could have gotten that trip to Europe, or I could have gotten that scholarship. And he said, in fact, the truth of the matter was he played basketball. He was pretty good, got recruited. One game, there were like 5 college coaches sitting out there. They came to recruit him, and guess what? He blew out his ankle, and nobody wanted him. And he wasn't, ever recruited again, and he couldn't even finish his senior year playing. And so he quit sports, and he didn't worry about being eligible anymore, and he got a job at the Gap, and he just wanted to have money for clothes and a car, and he started partying. And it wasn't until some months later that he started trying to get his life right with God. And he looked at me, and he said, you know, Dr. J, he said, I would have given anything If somebody would have drugged me into this awards banquet when I was a 10th grader and made me sit in this chair for 2 hours and not just tell me, now, you better think about what you want to do when you graduate. You better think about what you want to do when you walk across that stage. He said, I would have never listened to that. But if somebody would have made me sit in this chair and go through the night, and I could see with my own 2 eyes that they'd call your name and you walk across and somebody shakes your hand and they go, man, Raphael, we want to give you, or Joseph or Thomas or Sally or Allison or Joanne, I want to give you this scholarship to this university, or you can use it anywhere in the state, or you've earned this scholarship to go on this trip to Europe, or you know what, you've gotten this gift certificate because you did this. He said, Dr. J, if somebody would have made me sit down and I could have seen it with my own 2 eyes, I really think that it would have been different for me tonight. Now, I know this isn't quite the same thing, but look at me. The best I know how, and by the way, I can't do SLU by myself. There's a whole lot of folks that help me do what I do. But do you know what motivates me? I mean, to be in front of a couple hundred 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, 12th graders? I mean, you want to know what motivates me? Is that if the best I know how, I'm trying to get you to sit down in this chair and begin to think for once, because that's what leaders do. They think about the future. That doesn't mean they don't like being with their friends. It doesn't mean they don't have a life now. But you're conscious that what I do today has consequences. Please write that in the margin. What I do today matters. Today matters. And man, what you do in the 9th grade has a lot to do with what happens in your life when you're in the 10th and 11th grade. Okay? So think about the future. It's an undiscovered country. My mission, should I choose to accept it, is to fortify my roots and strengthen my wings. We want you to have roots, pretty young lady, so you don't get caught up in all the whims and the fashions that come along. It's amazing. We got all these fashion design shows on, and every young lady wants to be fashionable. Every young lady wants to look nice, and you know what? Man, you're doing a good job. You do, all right? But let me be honest with you. Sometimes the fashions, you can look so fashionable and be very modest. But I promise you, in the blink of an eye, the next season that comes around, it might be all dental floss. I got all the guys together. It was 70 degrees Sunday morning. I'm sorry, when did I fly out? Saturday morning in Orlando, it was 70 degrees. Now, you live in Houston, so that's no big deal. It'll be probably that today here. But when you're going to Gatlinburg and in that area, there was snow everywhere, sleet everywhere when we got there. And those young people were from all, those states up around those Smoky Mountains. But it was 70 degrees in Florida. And I said to the guys that had come from all over the country for that weekend, I said, now, you're going to go to SeaWorld. It's going to be hot today. And there are going to be a lot of young ladies trying to win the Shiny Heine Award. I promise you. I mean, there are going to be all these young ladies going, hey, check this out. Yo. I mean, hello. And I said, guys, listen to me. I said, when a young lady, and I said it to the young ladies as well, when a young lady dresses in a way to draw attention to her body, to draw attention to a certain part of her anatomy, so that every eye goes to that wherever, what she's really saying is, I don't have a lot here. I don't have a lot here. I don't have much heart and spirit, but check this out. Because normally you advertise what you think's the best thing you got going. So what I want you to understand, you ready, about putting down deep roots is that it keeps you from being caught up with every whim and every fashion that comes along. Here's the rule, ladies. If I were a young lady, and the therapist said not to talk about this, but not that I've given this a lot of thought, I quickly add, but if I were a young lady, I'd want someone to talk about my smile. I'd want somebody to talk about my personality. I want somebody to talk about my spirit, about my heart. Now, obviously, I'd want to do my best to look as good as I could look if I were a young lady. But you see, young ladies, listen, here's the key. When we talk about put down roots that keep you grounded and you don't get caught up with every little breeze and every little current that comes along because you've got roots. The key word, please write it in the margin, young ladies and guys, is virtue. The word virtue means moral excellence. Remember we said excellence means to rise above? Well, virtue is moral excellence. So there are times that we've got to really say, Lord, help me put down some deep roots so that I'm not tossed about with every wind of doctrine that comes, every fashion that comes, okay? So you want to put down deep roots. And by the way, when we talk about the future's an undiscovered country, just in the part of your listening guide where you've got so much space to write, I want you to write down right there where we talk about the wings, okay? I want you just to write down right in here, and I'm going to ask you to make it a goal. Now, I can't have a goal for you. Parents, look at me. Teachers, look at me. You can't have a goal for the young people in your class. Wife, you can't have a goal for your husband. Husband, you can't have a goal for your wife. Parents, we can't have a goal for our kids. Do you know by definition, only you can have a goal for you? Now, people can have a prayer. People can have a dream for you. People can wish. If you're from Arkansas, you could have the druthers. I tell you, if I had my druthers, whatever that is, sounded like, man, I got a bad case of the druthers. I mean, but anyway, but no one can have a goal for you but who? Tell me. But yourself. If I were you, looking back, knowing what I know now, having been following the Lord these 37 years, if I were you, here would be my goal when I graduated. And I'm going to ask you just to write it down, and if you don't like it and it doesn't ring true in your heart, cross it off. Fair enough? But just capture it. I want to make sure you capture it and think about it. How about this goal? That when I graduate, I want to have a reputation worth having. My goal, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, you may even be in your senior year, there's still time. My goal, I want to have a reputation when I graduate worth having. Now, what does that mean? Well, I want to have a reputation that I care about my friends. My friends know they can count on me. Now, girls, that doesn't just mean being a friend that goes, I'm always here for you, where you condone everything and you listen to everything. But it means sometimes you say to a friend, you need to be careful with that. That's not right. Sometimes being a friend means that you talk to your friend. I have a good friend of mine that's going through some real challenges in his marriage. I've known him 20 years. He's a leader. He is a phenomenal guy. I mean, I admire him. And I just had to have a heart-to-heart with him. I said, buddy, I'm your friend. If you run off with a horse, you do something crazy, I'm your buddy. But I'm going to tell you right now, as your friend, what you're thinking about doing is going to be one of the deepest regrets of your life. And I had a 20-minute, and I realized that maybe our relationship may not be the same after that. But I had to be a friend. You understand the difference? So do you want a reputation for being somebody that cares? Number two, do you want a reputation for virtue? Boy, if she says something, you can believe it. If he gives you his word, I used to say take it to the bank, but you can't use that phrase anymore. But anyway, I just want you to understand, do you want a reputation worth having? The second thing I would want to have, are you ready? I would want to have options. Do you know why grades matter? Do you know why I want you to start being a reader? I mean a real reader, a passionate reader. Number one, leaders are readers. But number two, I want you to understand, I want you to have options when you graduate. What does that mean? I want you to be able to go to almost any school in the world you want to go to. I want you to have options. I want you to be able to get that internship you want. I want you to be able to get that scholarship you want. I want you to be able to have many options. Do you know the exciting thing about trying to live right and do right and treat people well? I found that you have a lot of options. A lot of options. I'm grateful that one of the toughest things I have to do is figure out where I'm going to be on this day, because I get lots of invitations. I'm very grateful for that. You want options, okay? So I want to fortify my roots, and I want to strengthen my wings. And that's just a picture, again, of being able to rise above, soar above. All right? I purchase my tomorrows today. I purchase my tomorrows today. Now, if you're serious about preparing for the future, look at a couple of these verses. 1 Peter 3:15. Be ready to give an answer of the hope that lies within you. Be ready to give an answer of the hope that lies within you. That's why we study. That's why you've got some men and women that devote their lives to teaching the Bible. That's why you've got folks that are trying to encourage you and challenge you. Be ready to be able to give an answer. Why are we going to have Dr. Bill Brown here? He's written all those books on Christian worldview, PhD, speaks on college campuses all over the country to help, just another help. I know you have folks that are teaching you apologetics. I know that matters here. But I want you to be able to give an answer of the hope that lies within you. Number 2, Colossians 1, verse 9. Be filled with wisdom. Be filled with wisdom. And do you know the wisdom that you find in the Word of God will give you maturity far beyond your years, young people? Have you ever heard somebody say about a young person, a teenager or whatever, man, that guy's got wisdom beyond his years. That guy's got maturity beyond his years. That young lady, man, I tell you, there's just something about her. It's almost like she's 20 instead of 15. Now, what does that mean? That just means that, man, you've just filled your life with wisdom. And the only thing I know that can give you a real head start on experience and get you ready for the future is learn and fill your life with the Word of God. The Bible says in Colossians 1:10, walk in a manner worthy of the Lord. Walk in a manner worthy of the Lord. And then Ephesians 6, you know this passage where it talks about the whole armor of God. Put on the whole armor of God so that I can stand on that day. And you want to know what that day is? That's a day, I believe, when hell puts everything it has to come after you. And sometimes it'll be to come after you in the area of morality, and sometimes it's going to be in the area of cheating, and sometimes it's going to be in the area of quitting, and sometimes it's going to be in the area of giving. And I just want you to know we want to put on the whole armor of God, knowing what lies ahead. Now, students, I want you to stand up right now. I want you to stretch a little bit. I want you to do the boogaloo for just a moment. Man, it sounds like the 4th of July in here. Snap, crackle, pop. All right, now let me ask you a question. I want you to take your left foot, put your left foot in, put your left foot out. What's the rest? By the way, can I ask you a pretty painful question? What are you going to do when you find out the hokey pokey is not what it's all about? I mean, that's a difficult day, and I just want to prepare you for it, all right? All right? You stretched? All right, be seated. And then we're going to break for lunch. Anybody hungry? We're fasting today for the glory of God, and I'm sorry I didn't squeeze me. Kind of all ran together. All right. Now, students, let's do a little heavy lifting right here. I want to have a heart-to-heart with you about your future. I've been privileged. I've been invited to Oxford and sit on a panel and talk and lecture on 10 years from now, the next big thing is, and then I had to speak on it. That was my assignment. I've done that for 4 or 5 companies. Just recently I was privileged. Chick-fil-A brought in about 5 people and said, let's talk about 2020 vision. What will our company look like in the year 2020? And here we were wrapping up the year 2009. Now that's a great company. It's an incredible company. I was privileged to be one of those they asked. But I just want you to know, companies think about the future. Countries better be thinking about the future. And by the way, teenagers, do you think it matters that we've gone from number 1 in math and science to 24 and 25? Do you think that's going to have any effect on your life? I promise. Do you think it matters that we've gone from number 1 to number 16 in the number of students that finish college? Do you think it matters that kids that live in thatch huts with dirt floors score higher on some geography test than American students do? According to BarnesandNobles.com, the average American teenager reads 1 book from cover to cover, besides the required reading for school. And we all know how much you love and you read every word of the required reading for school. All right? Now listen to me very carefully. Do you think that's got any effect on your life and your future and your children? I promise you. And we keep saying America's the greatest country in the history of the world. And listen, we're the most powerful country in the history of any universe. Do you understand that? There's never been a country like America. There's never been a country as powerful. There's never been a country that's been as generous. We're the only people that when somebody attacks us and we go and defeat them, that we stay and rebuild it. Nobody else does that. Colin Powell said when America was being criticized so much, well, man, the only reason America's here, America's there, you're trying to take over and occupy these countries. Just know this, in our history, the only land America has ever kept after winning a war was when we asked for a piece of property to bury those that have fallen in battle. That's the only dirt we ever keep. So you be proud to be an American. But listen to me. We're a powerful nation. We're also a generous nation. China said they were giving $1 million for Haiti relief. That's chump change. They got that much money in a vending machines, at the bottom of when people forgot their change in just Beijing, okay? Now they've upped it, I think, to about 10 million. It's embarrassing what countries are giving, and the United States will give, I promise, 1,000 to 1 what anybody else gives. But students, you don't have anything to do with America being great. And can I be honest with you? My generation, we haven't done much. In fact, we've created so many fires for you on this planet that I can tell you, you know what motivates the teachers that are teachers? I promise you, with all the requirements and all the pressure and all the nonsense, and sometimes, man, students so unresponsive and unmotivated, there's one reason they do it. You say, well, yeah, God called them to do it. Well, that's true. But I also believe there's a strong passion of being concerned about what life is going to be like in the future without strong men and women. So this isn't a game. This isn't a game. I know it's not cool to care about your grades. I know that. It's not cool some places to be a reader. It's not cool to be a leader. It's not cool to do things when everybody else is playing, to go somewhere and be stretched and challenged or go somewhere and serve. But I want you to understand, America is great because of what the generation before my generation did. And if America is going to stay great, it's going to be because of you. And I always used to get nervous when people would say, I tell you, you're the hope of America. Don't you love it when people say that? You're the hope of America. And I'd look around at my buddies and I'd go, man, I'm moving to Australia. I mean, because I know my buddies pretty good. And if they're the hope of America, we're in guacamole. You understand? All right, now, but if you care, and I can't make you care, but if you do care, let's talk about the future. You ready? The future belongs to those who are prepared. Write it down, prepared. The future can belong to you, but you're going to have to prepare yourself mentally. You're going to have to prepare yourself physically. You're going to have to prepare yourself relationally and educationally and spiritually. Now, students, this is not fun, and especially just before lunch, but if you get what we're going to talk about on this page, it would have made this day worthwhile. Think about your future for just a few moments. Give yourself maybe the next 20 minutes before we go get a little toddy for the body and a little something, all right? Guess what? Let's talk about how the future could belong to me. To me. Number one, I must prepare myself mentally. I must prepare myself mentally. Okay? Now, that means there's some things I don't do and some things I do. Let's talk about how to get unplugged. Last night I got in late at the hotel. I got this huge grant proposal. I got people sending me material from all over the country. I've been on an airplane 3 hours. I spoke 6 times. I mean, I'm so far down getting that done. I get into the hotel. It's about 9:30, 10 o'clock. No internet service. Can't get it. Man, I tried 2 different cords. I call the front desk. I call the national hotline. I mean, I'm laying hands on it, you know. I'm wanting to cast the devil out of it. You know, I mean, I'm doing everything I can. Now, finally it came down to, they said, listen, what I want you to do is unplug and turn it off. I said, oh, great. I waited 20 minutes on the phone to hear that. He said, no, we got to get unplugged first. I want you to unplug it from the wall. I want you to unplug everything from your computer, and I want you to turn it off. And then we started over. So let's talk about what we should get unplugged in order that we can get rebooted, all right? And I'm not going to give you any preacher talk. I'm going to talk to you. When I say preacher talk, sometimes if somebody talks to you about alcohol, drugs, or sex, you expect the pastor, the youth pastor, to do a rain dance on that, don't you? I mean, be honest. You expect that. Every time you go to camp, you know you don't hear about the prodigal son. You know that, right? So let's talk for a moment. Do you know the Bible says, write this down if you would, be sober. Do you know what that means? There is a battle for my mind. Personalize this. There is a battle for my mind. There's a battle for my attitude. There's a battle for my thoughts. There's a battle for control of me. Do you ever wonder why, pretty young ladies? Look at me, young ladies, just for a minute. I always like to go pretty young ladies. You know why? Because the young ladies always go, shh, he's talking to me. And I am too. But anyway, pretty young lady, look at me just a moment. Do you ever wonder why? Have you ever heard the radio, the advertisements on the radio, or maybe you read about them in a newspaper if you're flipping through it? But all the night spots in Houston will say something like this. I mean, I can go to your weekend edition of the paper and probably find 10 examples of this. So-and-so club, ladies drink for free. Now, when you look at the population of Houston, ladies would be at least 55% population. Now, how are they going to make any money if ladies are going to drink for free? Well, it's real simple. As pretty as the ladies are in Houston, and guys find out they're going to be drinking, they're going to come in by bus, by helicopter, and by camel. You understand me? In other words, do you know why these night spots want ladies to drink for free? Because if the ladies are drinking, the place will be packed. Because here's a rule. Write it down. If I lose the battle for my mind, inevitably, I'll lose the battle for my body. And that's why somebody is always going to be trying to get you at a sorority party or some dance or somewhere you go, have a drink, smoke this, try this, because all of us will do something while drunk or high we never would do while straight or sober. Does that make sense? There is a battle for your mind. And by the way, pretty young ladies, you got to be very careful where you go. When I read about these young girls and they go off on these spring break trips, and that beautiful young girl disappears completely, and people say, oh, she was drunk or she was all over that guy. And I don't want to be disrespectful, and I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but I'd like to just say, where were the guys that were on that trip? Were there not any young men of honor? Was there not anybody there that would care about that and not try to take advantage of that and would make sure that she wasn't going to be leaving with somebody else? I mean, where were the guys? Where are the men of honor? And you have to understand, pretty young ladies, you need to know when you go somewhere, it can be a Coke, it can be a water, it can be a tea, it can be Sprite. It's odorless, tasteless, colorless. These little pills called the date rape drug. They're called Rufinol. And the nickname are roofies. And you know why they're called roofies? Yeah, because they come from Rufinol. No, because you're going to be on your back looking up at the roof because of that drug. Now listen to me, guys. You ever find one of your buddies that does anything like that? You got permission to body slam them on the spot, because that is less than a punk. Now, pretty young ladies, listen to me. Guys, listen to me. This isn't a game. General Pershing, I want you guys to get this. One of the great heroes in America's history, one of the great military leaders in World War I, said for us to put alcohol in our body and our brain, it's like putting sand in the ball bearings of an engine. You know, the word intoxicated means toxic, poison. And alcohol poisoning is one of the leading causes of death on the planet. We also know that alcohol is a gateway drug. Alcohol's first base. I started drinking. And then I moved up to the hard stuff, and then smoke this, and then try this. And I want to I'm not trying to come across as somebody trying to run your life. I have to earn the right to even be able to speak truth in your life. But I'm just telling you straight up, guys, you care about your future? I'd make a decision right now, today, once and for all, about alcohol. And mom and dad may like a little toddy for the body, and, you know, you may grow up, my wife grew up in an Italian family, man, and they drank more wine than you could float a battleship. But when she got serious about the Lord, and she loved her parents, she loved her Italian heritage, she loved all that, but, you know, we just both made some decisions in our young life about what we were going to do, and that decision was taken off the table from now on. So it's not any pressure for me. Jay, do you want to drink? I don't go, oh, no, it's the devil's brew. You know, I don't go through all that. I go, no thanks, man. No thanks. You know? All right. Now, not only is there alcohol, but the mind and mood altering drugs. Now let's talk about some positive things you have to do for your brain. You ready? Let's be quick. Students, you got to start thinking about taking care of you. Do you know that you need to drink, not only for your body, but your brain, at least 8 glasses of water a day? And you athletes that get dehydrated, you probably done, and you got the humidity problem here we have in Orlando and in Florida, you probably need to drink maybe 12 to 15 glasses of water a day. Your brain, the majority of it, is made up of water. And of course, some of you, it's low tide. But no, sorry. All right, anyway. So, number 2, you need to take your Flintstone vitamins. In fact, guys, you may want to just make a rule. Every day, I'm going to put on clean underoos, and I'm going to take my Flintstone vitamins. You may want to write that down. This is just me trying to be helpful, all right? Clean underoos, and because you might be in an accident. No, sorry. But anyway, you need to take vitamins. Write down with the word vitamins. It means life. Life begins when we detect the brain wave. People say, oh, it's the heartbeat. Well, it's very seldom because of the mother's heartbeat being so strong that it's the baby's heartbeat that's first detected. Because oftentimes the mother's heartbeat masks the heartbeat of the baby. But brain waves can be detected quite young. When do they know somebody's dead? When do we say life is over? Not when the heart stops, when the brain waves stop. Take care of your brain. Now, that's about the actual, by the way, it's a computer. You know that. You realize that you have the most powerful computer ever invented right here. Okay? And yet we spend so much attention on the ship that carries the cargo, you know, how we look. And we think very little about the cargo, our brain, and our heart, and our soul. So we worry so much about the ship and very little about the cargo. Does that make sense? Now let's talk about how you prepare yourself mentally as a student. By the way, guys, listen to me. I was horrible at this. Horrible at this. But do you realize that you will be at your mental peak if you can get 8-9 hours sleep a day? I always thought it was a weakness to be asleep. I always thought, man, nothing happens when you're asleep. But that's when your brain reboots itself. If you want to be mentally sharp, take care of yourself. You got to drink right. You got to eat right. You got to be careful what you put in your body. You got to take those minerals and vitamins. I'd start now at your young age. Now, how do you strengthen your brain? Your brain is a muscle. Please write down these couple of truths. Be a reader. The single greatest thing that will increase your vocabulary, the single greatest thing that allows your brain, both sides of your brain, to work and to function, the single greatest thing you can do to give your brain a workout, I'm going to give you the 4 best things. Number 1, read, 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 read. If you made a commitment to read 15 minutes a day, at the end of 1 year, you would have read 20 books. Be a reader. Read biographies. You love sports. Read about some of your great sports heroes. Read about some of the challenges facing sports.